In the Philippines, street vendors sell nearly 700 million of them every single year, whispered about on travel shows, dared on YouTube videos, and treated as the ultimate test of culinary courage. But balut isn't a shock food invented for tourists to fear. It's a centuries-old delicacy, with a history rooted in Chinese trade, Filipino ingenuity, and one of the most efficient protein sources ever developed by accident. Balut is a fertilized duck egg, incubated just long enough for a partially developed embryo to form inside, then boiled and eaten directly from the shell. To outsiders, this sounds shocking. To generations of Filipinos, it's simply dinner, sold from carts on street corners, the same way a hot dog might be sold in an American city. This is the part that most people never learn. Balut didn't originate in the Philippines at all. Its roots trace back to China, where fertilized duck eggs have been consumed for centuries, particularly in coastal provinces with strong duck farming traditions. Chinese traders and settlers brought the practice to the Philippine archipelago sometime before Spanish colonization began in the 1500s, and it took root particularly strongly in the province of Pateros, just outside modern-day Manila, an area with ideal marshland conditions for raising ducks. Pateros became so closely associated with balut production that it earned the nickname the Balut Capital of the Philippines, and even today a significant portion of the country's balut supply traces its origins back to duck farms established in this exact region generations ago. The marshy, water-rich environment made it naturally suited for raising Pekin and Muscovy ducks, the two breeds most commonly used for balut production. The process itself requires precise timing and generations of accumulated expertise. Duck eggs are incubated for approximately 14 to 18 days, significantly shorter than the full incubation period a duck egg would need to hatch, which allows the embryo to develop partially, enough to create the rich, distinct flavor balut is known for, without developing into a fully formed duckling. Vendors and producers who specialize in balut can often judge an egg's exact stage of development simply by holding it up to a light source, a skill passed down through families for generations, refined entirely through practice and observation, rather than any scientific measurement. But there was a problem. Balut production, done incorrectly, could result in either an undeveloped, unpalatable egg or one too far along in development for many consumers' comfort. This created a genuine culinary science around timing, one where a single day's difference in incubation could determine whether a batch was considered perfectly balanced or a failure entirely, unsellable in local markets. Balut's nutritional value played a significant role in its widespread adoption across the Philippines, particularly among laborers and working-class communities. A single egg provides a dense combination of protein, iron, and calcium, making it an efficient, affordable source of nutrition for people engaged in physically demanding work. Street vendors traditionally sold balut in the evening, often after dark, marketed specifically to laborers, students, and night shift workers seeking an accessible, protein-rich meal at a low cost. If you're finding this story interesting, hit subscribe. This channel covers the hidden history behind everyday things every week, and there is more coming. The cultural ritual surrounding balut consumption is nearly as significant as the food itself. Traditionally eaten with a pinch of salt, a splash of vinegar, or sometimes chili, the egg is cracked open at one end, the savory broth inside sipped first, before the remaining contents are eaten directly from the shell. This specific method of consumption, developed and refined over generations, is considered essential to properly experiencing balut, and deviating from it is often seen, particularly by older generations, as missing the point of the dish entirely. Balut also carries deep social and even romantic significance within Filipino culture. It has long been associated with virility and stamina, often marketed and consumed specifically by men seeking an energy boost. A belief with no strong scientific basis, but one deeply embedded in cultural tradition regardless. Street vendors historically sold balut, specifically in the evening near bars, social gathering spots, and areas frequented predominantly by men for exactly this reason. The dish gained significant international attention, though rarely for reasons that celebrated its cultural significance. Western media and travel programming throughout the 2000s frequently featured balut specifically as a shock value food, presenting it as a test of bravery for foreign visitors, rather than examining its actual culinary and cultural context. Reality television shows built entire segments around watching contestants eat balut for the first time, reactions of disgust treated as entertainment, an approach that stripped the dish of its centuries of cultural context and reduced it to a spectacle. This portrayal created a significant disconnect between how balut is genuinely regarded within Filipino culture as a nutritious, culturally significant, and in many communities beloved everyday food, and how it's frequently portrayed internationally as an extreme food meant to shock and disgust. Filipino communities, both domestically and abroad, have increasingly pushed back against this framing in recent years, with food writers, chefs, and cultural commentators working specifically to reframe balut within its actual historical and culinary context, rather than allowing it to remain defined purely by foreign reactions of disgust. Modern balut production has scaled significantly beyond its origins in small family-run duck farms. Commercial operations across the Philippines now produce balut at a massive scale, supplying not just domestic markets, but a growing export industry, as Filipino communities abroad, particularly in the United States, Canada, and the Middle East, maintain strong demand for the dish as a connection to cultural identity and home. Balut's story spans centuries, carried from Chinese coastal trade routes to Filipino marshlands, refined into a precise culinary tradition, embedded deeply into working-class nutrition and social ritual, and eventually thrust into an international spotlight that rarely understood what it was actually looking at. It remains, despite decades of shock value framing on foreign television screens, exactly what it always was within Filipino culture: an efficient, nutritious, and deeply traditional food, prepared with techniques refined across hundreds of years of careful, generational expertise. And it's still sold from carts on street corners across the Philippines tonight, the direct descendant of a Chinese culinary tradition transformed by Filipino ingenuity into something entirely its own.